Do you want to improve your match results? Well, using the right serve at the right time can have a dramatic effect. So, Alois, what does it mean to use the right serve at the right time?
Well, a lot of us now have developed some really good serves, but we find that our opponents are either getting used to them or we're using them at the wrong time of the match, and so we're not getting the best effect out of what we're able to do with our serves.
How do we know what is the right time? Like, what are some things we need to be thinking about?
Yeah, there's a few things. One is where your opponent's at. So we need to start to be able to read what your opponent is feeling at the time a bit. Start to see whether they're expecting a short serve or expecting a long serve, or start to see where they're wanting the ball to come to.
Okay, all right. So think about what our opponent is doing. Yep. What about ourselves? Like, do we need to think about our different strengths and weaknesses?
Yeah, so we also need to think, what's the serve that I feel most comfortable with? And when am I going to use that? Am I going to use that at the start, at the finish, in the middle, all the time? So that's something that we'll start to think about too.
Okay. So is this something we should be planning out? Like, I've got two serves, so at level, I should definitely use my tomahawk serve followed by a pendulum serve. And then the next time I serve, I should use this. Is it that specific?
Yeah, I think it's you need to be adaptable enough during the match, because if I serve the tomahawk serve first and my opponent puts it away past me at 100k an hour, I'm probably not going there again for serve two. So, but if I do serve the tomahawk serve for the first one, and I was planning to use the pendulum, but he hits the tomahawk serve over into the grandstand, then I'm going to give it another go.
Okay, so you don't plan it out point by point, but before each point, you are thinking about, what am I going to serve now?
Yeah. Yes. That time that you have in between points is crucial. You need to utilize that time really well to make sure you're starting to think about, what's my next serve?
Interesting. Now, I think you have an interesting quote here that might resonate with people, Alois.
Yeah. So I often say that if you've got a good serve, it'll win you a point. But if you use the serves at the right time, they'll win you the match.
Oh, I like that one. That's excellent. All right, Alois, well, let's move on now to our Fix It Fast segment. So mistake number one is that people don't use their best serve often enough. Tell us about this, Alois.
Yeah, well, I often see players go and do a great serve that has great effect, and they think, oh, I'm going to keep that till 10-all.
Well, yeah, because then at 10-all, you're like, I'll pull it out and I'll win the match and I'll be a hero.
True, but if you'd used it for the whole game, maybe the score is 8-2, or you're into the second game by the time you get to 20 points.
That's an interesting point. And I guess I've played against people that have used a serve and I've struggled with it. And then every time I'm about to receive, I'm like, oh, I hope they don't do that serve because I'm struggling with it. And if they do a different serve, I'm like, yes, I'm in this rally, I can win it. So yep. I'm not really, it's interesting. I don't know, maybe I had a problem, and I should have been thinking differently, but I was worried that they were going to use a serve I had trouble with. And I wasn't thinking like, how can I return it better? I'm just like, oh no, please don't do that serve.
Yeah, exactly. And if you flip it, thinking about it from your opponent's point of view, that's probably exactly what they're thinking. So I've got this good serve that I've used at the start of the match that they really struggled with, and they're just thinking, I hope he doesn't do that again. I hope he doesn't do that again. And I don't. And I'm doing this serve and that serve, and you're pretty comfortable and you're waiting for it to get to 10-all. But that for me, that's just not the right way to go.
Okay, so the Fix It Fast is use your best serve more often. Now, just on that, just a little bit more. Should you just use that every point then?
No, but you can always have some variations with that same serve, or just go away from it for a little bit, maybe one serve, change it, come back to it. Because thinking about it from your opponent's point of view, if they're not thinking like Jeff was and, panic, and they're analysing it and they're thinking, okay, so that one went there and I need to change a little bit. So if they're starting to get onto your serve, then it's time to change, give them something else, get them into a different position on their return, and then hit them with your boomer serve again.
Excellent. So make sure you're using your best serve a lot more than you probably are currently. So mistake number two is not being aware of what your opponent's returning patterns are. So yeah, talk to us about this, Alois.
When I'm serving, I'm starting to observe, what they like, what they don't like, but also where they're returning the ball to me. So, so it might be that I'm doing this serve. They might be actually comfortable returning the serve, but they're returning it every time to my strength. So it's okay to keep going and persevering with that serve, because now I'm gaining the advantage during the rally. But
so you're not winning the serve outright, but the rally is just in your favor most of the time.
That's right. Yeah. But if I'm doing that serve and now they're starting to push that ball into my backhand and I've got no backhand topspin, which I don't, then I need to start to change my serve a bit. And it might just be as simple as just changing the direction of my serve. So they might have a really good backhand push and they're starting to get the feel of it. Initially, they started returning it to my forehand, but now they're onto something and they've started returning it to my backhand. That's the time to change. So where else am I going to serve the ball to? What other type of serve am I going to do to break that pattern a bit? There are other things with the patterns that you can start to think about. Are they attacking more? Are they pushing more? Are they defending? Are they attacking? Are they also starting to move position in their receiving position? Because again, if I'm serving the ball all the time into that same spot, they're going to start to maybe just adjust a little bit, maybe start to think about, I'm going to get around and play a forehand from there. So that's the time that I'm going to start to change either there, change my serve as well.
Yeah, and in the introduction, we talked about when you can plan this, and it's probably not planning it out before the match, but it's planning it out before each point. So you've got, a few seconds between each point. Is there like a checklist you should have in your mind, or is it more just a feel thing?
It's a bit of a feel after each point. So as you're going to pick up the ball, or as your opponent's going to pick up the ball and you've got a few seconds, just replay in your mind, okay, what just happened? All right, I served it there. He's now starting to put the ball into my backhand. I need to change something. Or I served it there. Geez, he really struggled. Even if he returned it, he really struggled with it. I'm going to go again. So it's just always analysing what's happening during the game, point by point.
All right, so there you go. So the fix here is just take your time between serves and have a conscious thought about what is happening in the game, what are the returning patterns, and then decide upon your next serve. And mistake 3 is not considering the score. Now, why is this important, Alois?
You've got to start to think about the score and how it's going to be affecting your opponent as well, and perhaps yourself. So if the score is really tight, it's 9-all, and you're starting to feel that your opponent's tightening up a bit, that might be the time to just really give them a fast serve so that they are going to be surprised and not be relaxed enough to take advantage of the long serve.
Oh, yeah, so it's an interesting one because it's a bit risky, right? What if they aren't feeling tense and stuff and you serve the long serve? So this is a really tricky one to get right.
Yeah, it is a tricky one, and that's where the experience of playing more matches comes into it. And also, it's often really good to just have a look at your opponent in between points.
Yeah.
Because we often are so focused on how we're feeling and, oh no, I'm starting to feel a bit nervous. But sometimes if just glancing up at your opponent, you might suddenly see, wow, that guy is scared. And that's the time to start to think, okay, now is my time to change a serve. Alternately, at the start of a match and your opponent's feeling pretty loose and you see him jumping around, if I serve too many long serves and they're playing fast and free, they might whip the ball past me. And then you think, oh, I'm never going to serve long to them again. But the score changes your opponent's mindset.
That's interesting, isn't it? Because in different scenarios, I've heard people say, oh, you should always treat the score like it's love all. But I guess that's more from like trying to keep yourself calm.
Yeah, exactly. And, the other thing is at 9-all or at 10-all, you might be feeling that tightness, and you also might feel like, there's no way that I'm going to be able to attack this one because I'm just a little bit too tight. So that might be the time, okay, well, I'm going to just serve it short and try to keep the ball tight and see if I can get them to push the ball to me.
Interesting. And I like how you said, take a look up and look at what the other person's doing because you might, gain something there or might give you a bit of confidence. I remember one time, Alice, I was playing, it was like the final of the Dandenong Open and I lost the first set. This is back in the old days, best of 5 up to 21 when they had a good scoring system. And then I won the next 2 sets and I got up was up 2019, so I had a match point to win the whole tournament. And I was feeling pretty good, and I was thinking, I'm feeling good, so I'm going to do a heavy backspin serve, which, you got to get your wrist moving fast and stuff, sort of to show that I'm not nervous. But I did a heavy backspin serve, and the guy was ready and just did this beautiful short push. He won the point, won the next 2 points. I lost the match. And, maybe if I had looked up, maybe he would have been a bit nervous. Maybe I should have gone for the long serve.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's all tricky.
It is tricky. And, this is not a one recipe that fits all. You've got to really start to think about yourself, think about your opponent. And we always say, try to video your matches and just watch them back. As difficult as that might be sometimes, especially when you lose those close matches, it's important to just watch back and think, oh, okay, maybe I could have served that ball long at 1920.
Yeah,
2019.
2019. And I was only thinking about myself. I wasn't really thinking about the other opponent, like you said.
Yeah. And the video can often then allow you, while you're sitting back in your lounge room, instead of being at the table at 2019, sitting back in your lounge room and have a bit more awareness, and you can see what your opponent looks like, what your opponent is acting like, and think, okay, maybe if I had served long at that stage, they would have made the mistake.
Yeah, and like you said, it's not always right. Like maybe serving short is the right option at that time and he was just too good. I mean, there's lots of complications.
Yeah.
But the fix it fast here is consider the score and don't only consider yourself, but, consider your opponent as well. That brings us to Train Smarter, the segment where we give you 3 ideas for improving your training. What's the first tip, Alois?
The first thing is to build a bit of a serving menu. So
a serving menu?
Yes. So what I want you to do is to think about perhaps your 4 or 6 serves that are your go-to serves that you're going to use a lot of the time in a match.
Okay. Now, when you say 4, are you talking about the pendulum being 1?
That could be 1 or it could be 2 or 3 because the pendulum might be serving the pendulum down the line with backspin, or it might be serving it across court with topspin.
Okay, good. Because I think myself, like I didn't use the tomahawk much. It's a different one. I would use the pendulum and the backhand serve.
Yes, that's right. And so, think about those serves. So it could be pendulum, it could be tomahawk, it could be backhand, it could be reverse pendulum, it could be reverse tomahawk. Think about the serves that work for you. And the other thing to think about is the high toss or the low toss.
Oh, you love the high toss.
I love the high toss. Always have the high toss in your menu. So think about those serves, but then it might be, whether you're going to serve it short, whether you're going to serve it long, backspin, topspin. Yeah, what works for your game? So for me, I remember that the high toss serve, the high toss short with backspin to their forehand area was my go-to serve that I knew what was going to happen next and I felt really comfortable to play the next ball.
Okay, and so the best way to do this is maybe just 5-10 minutes every training session, just to do some serves, or?
And I think it's before you get to the training venue, or definitely before you get to a match, is just sit down and start to think about for yourself, what are those 4 or 6 serves that you're going to try to have as your building blocks for your serving patterns.
Excellent. All right, great training tip there. Now, what is number 2?
So the second thing is to think about your actual training. So I want you to not just go out there and, do a bucket of serves, for example, and just
Is there ever a place for that?
There is. So at the start of your training, or if you're starting to just think about exploring what you're trying to do with the serve.
Like Alice, we're pretty old now, and the reverse pendulum sort of came on, after us. So that's one where if I wanted to learn that, I'd have to go out and just practice it over and over and over, maybe for a while until I got the hang of it.
Yeah, exactly. I'm the same. So with the reverse pendulum, I would go out there with a bucket of balls and just start to get the feel of it, of where my arm needs to be, where my contact needs to be, et cetera, et cetera.
But this tip's slightly different. This is when you've built up your service menu. You've got the serve pretty comfortable with it. And then
we're going to start to think about perhaps setting up some scenarios in our head or with our opponent. Now the score is 9-all. What serve am I going to do? Where am I going to do it to? Thinking about an opponent might be your training partner, but it might be, I'm thinking about Jeff and I want to try and beat him next week in pennant or league. And I'm going to start to think about, okay, so if it is 9-all, I know that Jeff's forehand short push is no good. I'm going to try and serve the ball more there with backspin or whatever it is.
Again, and so this is like a plan, and obviously you need to be flexible with it, but I think that's a good idea. And remember earlier in this show, I talked about when I was 2019 up, I didn't really have a plan. I wasn't thinking, oh, what should I serve now? And, maybe that would have helped me.
Yeah, I think just having some ideas that you've thought about prior to, maybe before your training session, but definitely then during your training and what you've practiced is then going to start to flow into what happens in a match situation.
And you talked about doing different scenarios like 9-all, and how do you make that sort of match-like, or how do you make it feel like it's 9-all?
You could add some little rewards or penalties to the winner and loser. The winner gets to sit down, and the loser has to pick up all the balls at the end of the training session.
Okay.
Yep. So all those sorts of things. But yeah, just whatever is going to get you a little bit more motivated and a little bit closer to how you're going to feel during your match day.
Yeah. And then I also liked you said you can think about different opponents. So that's just, if you know who you're coming up against in the next few matches, think about that specific opponent.
Yeah, that's right. So have some real scenarios going on in your own head when you're training, not just serving and practicing and
so
training.
Then you come to the match time and you're ready for it.
Yep.
All right, great. All right, what is tip number 3?
So the third one is to start to think about reflection after your training, after your matches. Use video or just some notes. Sit down with yourself, put down some notes about what happened in those matches, and before you go out to play the next time, start to think about what serves worked when I played Jeff. What serves didn't work. If I serve it long to his backhand, he's got a killer backhand return. No, I'm not going to go there too often. So just by reflecting, sitting down, starting to think about some definite plans, then you're going to make better decisions about which serve you're going to serve at the right time.
Interesting, because this is a segment called Train Smarter. Now, a lot of people would think, well, that's not even part of my training. But you're saying this should be part of your training.
Yeah, definitely. It's often a neglected part of our training. The reflection, the time to just sit and think is really crucial. We often think that we haven't had a good training session unless we're sweating, unless we've hit 17,000 table tennis balls. But if you hit 16,000 and spend that other 5 minutes just sitting and thinking, imagine the learning that you can take into those next 16,000.
Yeah, and Alois, we like to think that we can remember everything, but I still, you and I maybe don't remember so much anymore. So, but even if you're younger, I still think it's probably a good idea to be writing this stuff down.
Yeah, write it down, put it on your phone, just have a little notepad. I use notes. Just put a little notepad of opponents or things that you want to think about with your serving, and that will really help you as you move forward.
Yeah. And when you suggest this to people, do you feel like they have a resistance to writing this down for some reason?
Definitely. So, and I think it's a lot to do with players thinking that training is only about how many table tennis balls we hit. It's really, really important to start to bring reflection and thinking time into your training as well.
There you go. All right. So that's tip 3. Make sure you are reflecting and make sure you write it down somewhere, even if it's digitally. Serve selection is like chess. You don't just serve, you plan ahead.
That's right. You've got to pause, think, and serve with a purpose. That's how you're going to choose the right serve at the right time.
And remember, as Alois always says, a good serve will win you points, but a well-timed serve will win you the match. That brings us to Train Smarter, where we give you 3 ideas on how to improve your training. All right, Alois, what's the first tip here?
I forgot.
It's a really important tip. Make sure to check out the PingSkills website. We've got heaps of step-by-step tutorials, expert tips, training plans. Plus, if you've got a table tennis question, you can ask it right there on the site, pingskills.com.